guys, I'm Rebel Star Girl. Before I get into the contents of today's video, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment with any critiques, questions, or suggestions. Today is another video in my Oh Boy, Let's Talk series. If you don't know what that is where I take an uncomfortable topic and talk about it for 8 minutes. With that said, oh boy, let's talk about depression.
So this video was very much unplanned. I am currently in a depressive episode, so this piece of art was something that I was making as a vent piece. I had no intention of filming it, but when my plans to make another I Draw My OCs Based Off Your Suggestion video fell through, I need another video. I was only about halfway done with the art piece at that point, so I thought it was time for another oh boy, let's talk video. So because of that, I only have the footage of me shading and rendering this piece, but I hope that you still enjoy it. My goal in sharing this is that for those who are struggling with depression, that they will feel a little less alone and maybe find some encouragement. First of all, my qualifications for talking about depression. I am depressed. For real though, I've been struggling with depression coupled with anxiety for about 7 or 8 years at this point. It started when I was about 11 or 12 when my parents got divorced. It was a rough split to say the least, so that caused a lot of hurt and in turn would cause a lot of self-hate, negative thoughts, and depression. I actually did a video on self-hate. It was my first Oh Boy Let's Talk, so if you want to see that, that'll be up in the corner. My first big depressive episode was when COVID hit. I know this time caused a lot of depression for a lot of people, and I was no exception. Just as things started to look up, however, my boyfriend dumped me. Wait, stop. No, don't you even. I know how that sounds. Oh no, a teenager got depressed because their boyfriend dumped them and now she claims she has depression. Oh, poor her. Yes, I get that. Part of it was the fact that, oh no, 2 high schoolers broke up. Of course I was sad. But it wasn't just a, oh, she's sad for a couple months or a few weeks and then she's over it, whatever. I met this boy in the midst of my parents' divorce and had been clinging to him as a source of happiness and hope for 4 years at this point. I had used him as a band-aid to keep myself together through COVID. So when he left, I had to face not only losing my best friend, but all the other issues that I had been fixing through him. Side note, that's why the Bible says to put your faith and trust in God and find your joy in Him, because people aren't eternal. So my depressive spiral begins, and it lasts, and lasts, and lasts 8 months. Before finally my mother put her foot down and told me that I needed to get some anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication to help me. Now, I know there is a lot of back and forth on whether Christians should take medication. But personally, I can tell you that if I had not taken the medication at that point, I do not know if I would still be here, and if I were still here, I would be miserable. And I know some people would say, well, you should have just trusted God, or you should have prayed more. But the thing is, I was doing that. I was doing all those things. I went to church every Sunday. I was praying, I was trying to read, I was crying out, I was doing all the things. But the problem is with depression like that, it's not something you can just willpower through and pray your way out of. I have really high functioning depression. In the middle of all of this, I was working towards a new job, I got my black belt, I was on my way to graduating. I've done a lot of things in the midst of my depression. But that doesn't make it any less hard. I still had depression. And so my options really were here. I wait and see if God miraculously heals me, or I try some medication to lessen this depression so I can get back on track. Now, could God have totally miraculously healed me? Of course He could have, but He doesn't heal every sick person. Jesus didn't heal every single sick person on the planet when He came to earth, and God doesn't heal every single sick person now. It's like when you have a cold, you aren't going to say, well, I'll just pray about it and not take any cold medication. And now, of course, I understand that cold medication and antidepressants are not the same thing, but I don't think it's sinful to say that I need some antidepressants. It's not a matter of not trusting God. It's a matter of I need this in order to be healthy and function properly. If I had a lifelong stomach ailment, where if I did not take meds, I could possibly die, or if I didn't die, I would have to live my life indoors. I'm not going to say, no, that's okay. I'm not going to take that medication that allows me to live a quote-unquote normal life. I'm just going to pray about it. Of course, I'm going to pray about it, but I'm not going to think, oh no, maybe I should just pray about it, or if I take this, I'm not trusting God. God has given us medication. God has given us doctors. Meds for lifelong illnesses and mental disorders don't magically cure you anyway, but they do allow you to stay healthy and function to an extent where you can find non-medication ways to cope with them. Your faith and trust in God is still required. You still have to do this with God if you're really going to handle it, because you're still going to struggle with it. It's not going away. Coming to terms with the reality that my depression is not something that I'm going to be able to cure is really hard. But over the last few months or so, God has been really showing me to trust Him. There were these verses that God showed me that I've been holding on to these last couple of months through this depressive episode. It reads, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, and my power is made perfect in weakness. Now, I had heard that verse before, but it wasn't until now that it really stuck out to me. The context is that Paul, the person who wrote that verse, was saying that he had been given a thorn in his flesh and a messenger from Satan in order to keep him from becoming prideful, some sort of struggle, some sort of ailment that was keeping him humble. And he was asking God to take it away. And what God said to him is that His grace was sufficient for Paul and that His power was made perfect in weakness. And Paul goes on to say that therefore he will boast all the more gladly about his weaknesses so that the power of Christ may rest upon him. Similarly, there is a passage in John where the disciples asked Jesus whether a particular man had been born blind because of the sin of him or the sin of his parents. And Jesus tells him that he was born blind in order that the works of God might be displayed in him. This is also very similar to Job's suffering, where there's a whole back and forth going on in between God and Satan in heaven that Job never knows about. There is always a reason for illness, for suffering, and for how you're born. In another book of the Bible, also written by Paul, he says that it was because of an illness that he first preached the gospel to a group of people. I absolutely love that verse because I've often thought that about my own anxiety. God has given me a passion for jobs that require a lot of things that trigger my anxiety. And I can't help but think that if it was all easy and came naturally to me, then God wouldn't be getting as much glory. I wouldn't be relying on Him like I have, and I wouldn't get to tell people that it is only by God's strength that I get to do those jobs. And I can do the same thing with my depression. I can say that it is God that lets me function as well as I do with depression. That God is the reason I keep going. I keep working. I keep trying my best. God has kept me alive, given me hope, and reminded me of His promises. God is the reason that I'm alive and that I continue to live. So for anyone who's struggling with depression right now, please know that you are not alone. I am right there with you. Know that God still loves you. Know that no matter how high functioning you are, you're not just being overdramatic. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone. It's really important to share what's going on, even when it's really hard or it feels embarrassing. Please do not be afraid to get the help you need. Thank you guys so much for listening all the way through. I hope this was helpful to some of you. As usual, I have no idea what the next video is going to be or when it is going to come out, but whatever it is and whenever it does, I hope to see you then. Bye!